There we go.
All right, Lauren, I think we're ready when you are.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order at 3:01. Can we have a roll call, please, Beth?
Austin,
Here.
DiDonato,
Here.
Dombrowski,
Here.
Jacobson,
Here.
Rosenthal,
Here.
and Todd.
Hello.
For CCS, we have Rebecca Malinowski, Deborah Wishmeyer, and Beth Stoneburner.
Great. Thank you all for coming to our first of, I don't know how many, but hopefully not too many Budget and Finance Committee meetings for CCS. Do we have any changes or additions to the agenda? All right, hearing none. Do we have any public comment? No members of the public came in for roll call. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting from oh so long ago, March 17th, 2022.
I'll move.
Yeah.
Second.
We have a motion from Jacobson and a second from Austin.
Correct.
Can we have a roll call, please, Beth? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a discussion? I had one note on a typo under the development fund. There's a note, it says not less than 75% and note more than 150%. I think it's supposed to be not more than 150%, but other than that.
Are you one of those board members, Lauren?
I looked at the note and I'm wondering what the note was. That was my only problem, was like, is it confusing because we're talking about the math? So other than that.
Yes, she's one of those board members.
Thank goodness, then you don't have to be.
Exactly.
Just email me before the meeting so I can correct it before. We don't have to talk about it. Sorry, Lauren, I'm just messing with you.
Lauren is like the best. There will be no Lauren slander. Well, I know you're all teasing, but
I think someone just had a
too many
difficult
former
board meeting
treasurers on this
recently.
call to claim a favorite treasurer, though. I won't do it.
It's okay.
Okay, if we can have a roll call, please.
Austin,
Yes.
DiDonato,
Yes.
Dombrowski,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Rosenthal,
Yes.
and Todd.
Yes.
Okay, Rebecca, if you can talk to us, please, about next year's budget draft and plan.
I sure can. So this is very similar, but not exactly the same as the budget I sent you on Monday. And I'll go through where we're still updating. So high level overview, we have a first and now the start of a second draft of the budget for 2023-2024. We are still working out a couple of sort of bigger picture items that are going to impact a few budget lines, and we'll talk through those. My overall plan is that we'll get some feedback on various items at this meeting, any concerns that we need to address, and then I will take another pass at things. And we'll have maybe only one more meeting before governing board, but if we find we need another, we have time to schedule it. So I think we can see how things go. So I'll kind of like very quickly tell you what I wanted to go over. And then if there are other things that you're like, oh, let's add this to the list, we can do that either upfront or as we go. As we did last year, I want to discuss a little bit what your libraries are planning in terms of increases for your staff for next fiscal. I'll talk through kind of the IT questions that we're working out in relation to the new office space and why some of these costs are still up in the air. And I want to talk through why the rent line is going to look kind of willy-nilly for this year and next year, and then it'll level out the year after that. And Then we can talk development fund. My intention is at the next meeting, we'd have an updated list of potential uses for the development fund. So we'd be able to talk in more depth about potential rebates or use of those funds that we have at that time. So outside of those items, is there anything that you want me to add to my list to make sure I talk through that you know of at this time? Then I will start by just pointing out we are at this time not projecting any increase in overall library billing. So if all kind of stays within the general ballpark of this budget, members will see a decrease in their fees with the addition of Warren Newport because we're taking the same amount of money, splitting it amongst a bigger pot. So we are excited about that. I am going to skip development fund. So in the ILS section, we've got our annual uplift noted in here. We will be purchasing licenses for Warren Newport. They will cover year one of their licenses, which will actually take us through. And I will go over this all again because this is the most confusing thing to me. We've got like our contract years and our fiscal years, and then our libraries like go live years. But we won't, I don't think we'll see an increase to our planned spending for ILS fees until year 5 of our contract. And we're the year ending April 2026. But I will double check that for our next meeting. But any increase this year will be fully covered by Warren Newport, so it's not reflected in the budget because it'll be a one-time purchase. And then next year, the group price will go up. So this is a standard chain increase. In our personnel line, I know the CPI just came out and it was another high one. I love Alex on the director's list, like just jumping in ASAP whenever there's a new like government publication. He's like, did you guys see that? So thanks, Alex. So this budget it's a 3% overall increase in the salary budget line. But this like imaginary position that we haven't hired yet kind of keeps changing. So the earmarked salary for that position have actually decreased. So this would allow for up to 5% increases for staff next year. We did 4% this year. And I would like to hear from you what you are planning to do for your staff so we stay in line with our member libraries. So I'll pause here.
I haven't made that decision yet. Last year we did 7% because that was the CPI, even though we knew we were only going to get 5% on the levy. Last year I said that if it was over 5% again, we would limit it to 5%. So it's maybe that I might go and ask for the 6.5 that the CPI is again. But like I say, I haven't started having, but that's the ballpark I'm at, but I haven't started my conversations yet.
A couple of years ago, when we saw the minimum wage increase schedule, our board approved bumping everybody who was below or at minimum wage up by $1 per hour on January 1st of each successive year. And then to kind of make sure that everybody kept going up, they approved an 85-cent per hour increase for everyone across the board at the same time that dollar was applied on the January 1st of each year. So I don't have an exact amount or percentage just because we haven't created that spreadsheet yet with those exact numbers, but that is the protocol we're using. Like
others, we haven't decided completely yet. I appreciate what Alex did with his first step with CPI. Just staying flat with it, but we've never gone with CPI. We've always gone above CPI. And before the last couple of years, and now we're willing to go below CPI because, you know, it evens out. And so last year we did, we're also dovetailing because of minimum wage, but Rebecca, you don't care about minimum wage stuff, but that affects us. So that kind of, in some ways, pollutes a little bit of this information, because a lot of what I'm looking at is like, well, you know, my minimum wage people are going to $13 an hour, which is 7.9% increase. That means my people are at $15 need a 6.2, you know, and so on and so forth. And so generally the lowest raise we gave last year was 4%. And this year we're looking to do even higher. So probably the lowest raise will be about 4.5%. Unless someone's not meeting expectations, then they get nothing. But you know, generally speaking, we're looking at 4.5%. It's not just across the board, but it kind of is. But you know, if someone's a high achiever, we might go a little bit more than that.
The ELA is exactly as Mick described. You know, I see us landing around for minimum, hopefully minimum 4.25, likely 4.5. In my dreams 5, but you know, I don't know. I felt like it was my head was at the understanding that, well, yes, in years where CPI was 0.7, we gave more than that, but it was one thing to say that last year when we didn't give 7%, we gave 4%. I feel worse about it the second year in a row, so I don't know, but I think it'll probably be around 4 to 4.5.
Yeah, I mean, we've done our benchmarking with HR Source was in 2019. So, you know, at that time, we did some adjustments to like get folks at kind of the right market value, essentially. So while we haven't had those minimum wage updates, we have had some staff that have gotten some adjustments. And then for those years where we were doing a couple of big adjustments for staff, other staff who were at the high end of their range, you know, didn't really see much of a change at all. I think one year we did like a 1.2% increase for folks who were above their midpoint for their salary. So yeah, certainly as we're, you know, entering this second year of very high inflation, I guess, and the internet can't stop talking about eggs, I'd like to be mindful of that, even for those folks who are at the higher end of their ranges. So I don't know if we want to kind of leave it as it is and circle back when we see what the rest of the budget numbers shake out with, where your feelings are on this. I'm happy to take some input.
You know, those HR, we did the HR thing and it's almost useless now. And yours was before ours because the world shifted and all that information now I'm like, okay. And they weren't very quick on, you know, they're surveying and they're using that data, which is always 6 months behind or a year behind. And so the world moved a lot faster than HR Source was ready for it, as far as I'm concerned. And so I wouldn't use, that is no longer like a golden grail or whatever you want to call it, a rule. I would really recommend going up 4.5% on this and holding that money. And you mean like you go through your review process, but that allows you to acknowledge high performers and do what's right. And then, you know, eggs are $7, gas is, who knows what gas is going to be next year. And thing is that we make this raise using last year's data for next year's living. And so it's almost like, how do we project this better? And I'm not, you know, if we're projecting a recession, if we're projecting other things, those things all should matter. And you only get to do this once a year. And so next May 1st or whatever, when you do the fiscal, there it is. So I would recommend going up to 4.5% here as a placeholder. And then as we get more data in a month or two, we can revisit that. That's my opinion. which is worth about 2 cents or 4.5%.
I want to make sure everyone gets, Monica, have you?
I was just gonna say, I haven't decided yet either because my fiscal year doesn't end until the end of June. But this past year, we did 3.5% to 4.5% increases. And then we did a 3% bonus at the end of the fiscal year. So it ended up being 6.5% to 7.5%, depending on where they were. I won't have that much payroll left over, which is a good thing because I'm using it. But I think we'll likely land somewhere between that same number, like 3.5% to 4.5%, depending on how folks are performing. I also will be adding some new positions next year. So some of my money is going to get eaten up for that. But I think, you know, I agree 100% with what Mick said. We're using data that's already outdated to try to forecast a future that hasn't happened. But I think, you know, in terms of how I operate things, we've never gone by CPI either. So we've always typically done higher raises and adjustments than CPI. So, I mean, we're all feeling the squeeze, and I always try to give my people as much as we can while leaving money to still operate everything. So I think if if the budget can sustain, a 4 to somewhere between a 4 and a 5% increase, then I think that's a reasonable range. And like Mick said, when we get more data, we can look at it again.
All right, and I apologize, Anthony, I'm sorry, did you get a chance to weigh in or not? I can't remember now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've got the same fiscal year beginning in July. We haven't begun this budget process. We've done benchmarking studies with HR Source as well. We make incremental improvements to our compensation as well. We've done a lot progressively over the past couple of years to kind of get ahead of the curve with relation to minimum wage. I'm still concerned about compression. And so we will be taking some additional steps there within the individual grades. But I would say overall, we're probably looking at something more like 4% this year, just because we're already feeling like we're already aligned and where we need to be. But I do think that, for all the other reasons that y'all been talking about, we're thinking it's not going to be less than 4. We don't do a merit-based system. That is something I would like to do. I may ask for a merit pool above and beyond that. But at this point, that's just it's an across the board 4%.
Okay. Rebecca, do you feel like that's a good starting point, and we'll have another meeting and get some final numbers?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. And then most of the other numbers here kind of come off of that. I haven't asked Beth to do this yet, but I want to look at the unemployment tax again. We've been on the higher end of the payments for our pool for that for several years, but some of that sort of liability is dropping off. So I want to double check that number. Insurance benefits, we've had some changes to elections. So we've seen a decrease in anticipated costs. This number for 23-24 includes an estimated 4% increase in premiums, as well as a cushion for someone who doesn't currently have insurance to jump to the sort of most expensive plan. So we've got some flexibility in there. And then with our personal equipment reimbursement, I have that flagged to increase it by 2%. So I was trying to find some data on cost increases in the market and haven't gotten super far on that yet. And like a 2% increase on $40 a month isn't, I think, going to break the CCS bank, honestly, or make that much of a difference to our staff. But I think it shows that we're keeping an eye and want to continue to adhere to the spirit as well as the letter of the law in this area. Any other questions on personnel or feedback? Any comments?
On the personal equipment reimbursement, do you see that changing with the new offices, or do you think the same work at home will continue?
So at this point, the only people who are getting a benefit specifically for working from home are, we have 2 staff members who don't have on-call responsibilities due to the nature of their position. Everybody else would be getting the stipend whether or not we had work from home, because they have on-call responsibilities and use their personal equipment at home for on-call.
That makes perfect sense.
Actually, Rebecca, we only have
So-
one.
Oh, Virginia, you're right. Thanks, Beth.
Mhm.
Spoiler alert, it's Beth. Beth doesn't have to be on call.
You don't want me on
so-
call, trust me.
Yeah, so I mean, if we did choose to remove it from those staff who don't have on-call responsibilities, when we move to the new office, it would not have a big impact on the budget one way or the other.
Just curious, and
Yeah.
on call is certainly a super use for that, so makes perfect sense.
For rating, so no big changes in operating. We've had some changes in the publications, but we're sort of shifted, like the ALA Smart Libraries newsletter. One of the newsletter publications is going to purchase by issue rather than a subscription model. So we just kind of moved to where those funds are there. Yeah, nothing really exciting in this budget. We have some additional, we haven't printed bookmarks or any sort of promotional docs for our members since COVID started. I did pop some funds in here with the change of CCS address, although I don't know how much that matters. So kind of thinking about this, it could stay or go before the next budget, but it's just for printing. Other than that, this stuff is all the same. Datacom, Marcin, our IT manager, for those of you who might not know, is working with AT&T on the transfer to the new office space. Services that are available may be a little different, so we might see some fluctuation here, but we did virtualize those phone lines. So our phone and internet and by phone, I mean our phone notice phone lines are all in one bill now. So hopefully we can keep that. It's been working pretty well. And we'll have comparable rates in the new space, but we're still working that out. I think as you've seen for your libraries, professional development and travel kind of keeps shifting a little. We have some staff that are ready and excited to go to in-person conferences and have been to some, and others who are a little bit more cautious or not sure yet. So we're kind of budgeting at the same levels. We've gotten some specific requests in from folks for next year, and I'm excited for the learning that they're ready to do. And it is a mix of virtual and in-person. With the Warren Newport, we're going to be doing some in-person training and library visits. So we expect to start seeing that mileage reimbursement start creeping back up. It's been very low for a few years for, I think, very obvious reasons. But again, nothing earth-shattering here. Pausing. Insurances. Keeping on. I did include a pretty significant increase here. I included a 10% increase just in case, because we keep hearing that business insurance rates are going up. So it's included here. We don't have a quote yet for the next year. Hopefully we won't need all of that, but we've got it if we need it. Lauren, do you have any insight? Are you on
I'm not
this board?
on the Lyra board anymore when I moved to ELA.
Oh, okay.
Although I will say our individual provider just emailed me an hour ago and said they're pretty much holding rates constant from last year to next year. So that really surprised me.
That's good. I know there's some savings. They changed that cyber provider last minute. So hopefully they'll mitigate it.
Yeah, Lyra's a great
Overall,
operation, so.
Yeah.
Do all they can.
Yeah, I think overall it's been a really good shift for us. So that is the same. This is an area where things start to get a little up in the air. So we still have our CCS co-location space. So we rent rack space at the Schaumburg Police Department for the servers that are not yet cloud-based. At this time, there really is only one server left running there, but it's a big one. It's the web report server. It's got a lot of data on it. It's a powerful server. So Marcin is looking at our options for the new office space. He's been looking at them and price, like we thought we had a plan, and then the prices were not where he expected them to be. So he's going back to the drawing board and looking at some more pricing. So I think the least likely scenario is that we continue to manage the server and be responsible for the hardware and keep it at the co-location site. I think we initially moved to the colo when the CCS office space was having very regular power outages. I don't know how many of you were around. I know Lauren was around during that time, Alex and Jim. It was just like the power would go out at CCS anytime the wind blew. And that was when we still had the Cersei Dynix servers in-house. So of course, Polaris is now cloud-based. Web Reports is still a vital service, but we don't anticipate those issues in the new office. And while we have a much smaller IT space in the new office, it can certainly manage one big server in that space without needing any additional heating or cooling. So that is one option, is that we'll discontinue the colo space, bring the server back to the office. If that is the case, we will be due to renew our Windows Server license. It's a 3-year term, so it's about $3,000 spend, but we'll also be due, as you'll see, well, it's not really on the capital tab yet. We'd be due to purchase a new web server for about $10,000. Which we have the money in our development fund. We certainly can afford to purchase a new server. It's really a question of if purchasing that server and managing it in-house is going to be better in the long run in terms of replacement and upgrades over one of our other two options. So other two options would be, one, moving to a totally cloud-based system like Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, where we're renting ethereal cloud space from a provider. That is what we thought we were going to do, and the prices were just a lot higher than Marcin had anticipated. So he is, in addition to pricing that out, he's also looking at renting physical space in a physical server farm where they would manage the servers as well, and we still wouldn't be responsible for replacing the hardware, like the server farm upgrades the hardware and maintains it. So those obviously have that month-to-month cost, and we're just working to balance the month-to-month versus the occasional big costs of renewing licenses and upgrading hardware. So I'm hoping we'll have that in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll have a decision on that, and then we can update the budget, because it does hit it hits our capital budget, it hits this maintenance agreements budget. The impact on utilities would be minimal, but theoretically could be, I don't know, $1. So we're working on that, and I plan to have an update for you at our next meeting. So this number is not really a real number yet. The reason I have Comprise subscriptions still on here and highlighted is that I am still working with them to try to get like a 3-month extension or a month-to-month extension on our contract. So we are not on the hook for $18,000, but you all can take your time with a migration to whatever tool is going to suit you best. I talked with Don over there this morning, and he should be getting me something by the end of the day. So we'll see what that shakes out to be, but worst case scenario, I'd say we could renew for another year for the full 18,000 that we already have budgeted. And then libraries can drop off as they need to. Again, I'd like to get that cut in half or a third if we can. we'll see. We've added back in some IT services and testing to do some intrusion testing, especially if when we make changes to how we store that server, whether we're local or not. I'd like to do another round of testing to make sure we're not missing any vital security components, or which I think would make Lyra happy as well. So no huge changes here, but we should have this ironed out for our next meeting. Questions? And then capital, this year, we are projecting to go over budget on office hardware. We've been significantly under budget in capital for the past few years. This includes purchasing new training laptops. They could wait until next year to be replaced, but since we're bringing on Warren Newport and then bringing more Mount Prospect on right after, why not just get them new now? So we get two good libraries, like at least two libraries get a strong use out of them. I think we'll do some training on site at Warren Newport, but having that managed hardware in-house is still really beneficial for training. The team did an awesome job onboarding Palatine and Grays Lake without the opportunity to do in-person training, but certainly feedback from those staff indicates that they would have liked it. So we're excited to be able to provide that to Warren Newport as well. We'll look to upgrade that. And then next year's budget, again, it depends on if we're going to purchase that server or not. If we are going to purchase a server, we'd also need to purchase, probably upgrade a firewall, which is insignificant in cost compared to the server. But this number will be updated as well. We don't usually have a rent spreadsheet, but I gave you one this time. So this table is not in your packet. I added it this morning. Essentially, I wanted to very clearly outline why rent would only be $34,000 next year when we're in our shiny new space. And note that it's not going to be $34,000 the next year. So the short explanation is for the next fiscal year, 8 months of that, we will have no rent at the new space because we have 9 months of rent abatement. So 1 month of that will be on this fiscal, and then 8 months will be next fiscal. We'll have a couple of months left on our lease in our current space. So we will be responsible for rent and common area maintenance and tax and any sort of assessment they choose to bill us for a couple of months into the next fiscal. And then we will have some glorious months of no rent. And then in March of 2024, our rent will start on our new space. And the cost kinds of shift. So I have two columns here. I have the rent column, and then CAM is common area maintenance, and then real estate tax, and again, a building assessment. Our actual rent is significantly lower in the new space than in our current space. The common area maintenance is a lot higher. Overall, it is still much less. We're looking at like $6,000 a month instead of $11,000 a month. But it just is going to look different on the budget. We've been tracking common area maintenance, tax, and assessments in our maintenance agreements tabs because it's like work that happens on the space. This would be a good opportunity to change that and just put like all of the rent stuff together. Before we also had like the cleaning services were in maintenance agreements. But cleaning services are now included in the common area maintenance in the new space. So we can change how we track it if we want to. With the change to the new building, it would be a good opportunity to do it. It's also going to be itemized on our invoices, and we've been tracking it separately for years, and we can continue to do that. The other thing, I know the spreadsheet doesn't probably make a lot of sense to someone who's not in my brain. So I have it month by month for the next fiscal. This abatement year 1, year 2, year 3, this is what year of the lease agreement we'd be in, because there is an escalation in the lease. So we'd actually only be paying 3 months of rent at the rate of $15.50 per square foot, which is the first year, and then it goes up 50 cents per square foot for every year after that. So I have year 2 broken out into 2 chunks, just so you can see per month what that looks like. So per month, it would be like a $100 increase per month. And then this is 11 months of year 2. And then year 3 would be like the first year where we don't have anything weird going on, I think, and we'd level out. And that's just the annual cost, which we pay monthly. It's a weird spreadsheet. It made sense in my head.
But even in year 3, it's still a significant savings versus the existing rent on the existing space.
Yes, yeah. So over the overall cost per square foot is less when you consider in operating costs and maintenance. And it is a significantly smaller space. So it's less per square foot and it's less square footage. So we will see some costs that we haven't 100% factored in yet in renting the meeting room spaces. We have a certain number of free uses per year for each space in our lease. And then beyond that, we'd have some cost. We haven't quite figured out. We think we have as many free uses as they'll give us in the lease. We're not sure how many above and beyond that. And we think that'll change year to year as we have different needs. But it's a pretty nominal cost, certainly less than renting our current space or renting a space large enough to host those meetings.
Well, that's
So this is one of the areas where we see the biggest savings in next year's budget. If you look at our current numbers, it's less expenditures this year or next year compared to this year. And this is a big reason why. Anything else here? And the last tab here is electronic resources. Novelist has a pretty significant jump due to the addition of Warren Newport. RDA Toolkit is also increases due to Warren Newport. It's a much smaller increase. It's just not as expensive as a tool. Should we move to Vega in the future, which we may or may not do, Novelist Select isn't a part of Vega, and that's the integration into PowerPack. They have other tools that they're integrating with. So if we were to move to Vega in the future, we would certainly need to reconsider our Novelist package and may find that it's not worth it for our members. I don't know, but I think it makes sense to continue at this time based on the usage of Novelist and Library Aware, which are both included in that package. And then the development fund, I updated the numbers for the rail support grant with the correct number for this coming fiscal. I have the Vega fund slotted in there just so it is slotted in there, but we certainly won't be going live in this fiscal. I doubt that if we were to move forward that it would be next fiscal, just based on all the things, but I have it slotted in just in case. This isn't money that we're billing in. So whether or not I have this in here, that doesn't change the member fees that we'll bill. So it seems safe to have it. So at the next meeting, we'll review the list of potential uses for the development fund, which will inform what we want our final balance to be, which will, so then we can talk about any potential rebate that we want to do this year beyond the Rails rebate.
Sounds good.
So Rebecca, is the 75% of the 436,000? I don't know where the 436,83 comes from.
Yeah, that is the estimated cost of the items on the development fund list. So we'll
Thank you.
revisit that list, update those costs, and then we'll update this ending balance guidelines.
Yeah. Looks good.
So that is what we have. I think the draft is in good shape for some tidying up for a final review at our next meeting, but I'm happy to hear any additional comments, concerns, questions.
I think my first reaction is if I were to present a flat budget to my board, they would be elated. So to say that it looks like we're not incurring additional expenses in the coming year, that's a good budget. That's an impressive budget.
Thanks, Beth, for finding us new office.
Anyone else have any initial thoughts?
Really good work. Thank you, Rebecca and team.
Great.
So again, member fees, which is technically on the agenda next, I anticipate they'll be a little bit lower for each library, but I'll have a draft of that for your review with the next round of the budget as well.
With the addition, and sorry, refresh my memory, because it'll be the addition of Warren Newport in the coming year, but then Mount Prospect won't be until the following. Awesome. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the CCS ePay account.
I don't have a lot here. I just wanted to give an update. I just found out I have a training scheduled with ePay on Friday morning at 9 a.m. So I don't know if that means I'll have the credentials I need to set it up in Polaris or if I'll have it after the training. So once I have that set up, and the Polaris setup is, as far as I can tell from quizzing our site manager, literally just inputting 2 numbers into sysadmin. So we'll see. Deborah, you're going to get roped in to make sure I don't break anything when I do that. But once I have that set up, I want to set up a demo for CCS members so you can see it actually in our system and see what that looks like. And Lauren, I may ask you, I'm not sure how far along you are with your setup with your kiosks to speak to that, or have someone on your team speak to that a little bit. I also am working with Megan, who is our contact at the treasurer's office, where there are 9-ish libraries that already use ePay in some capacity. So I was asking her, like, so do you just like give me a client key and I can get them set up, or do they have to do additional agreements or anything? And she's like, I think they can just get set up, but I'll check. So for some of those libraries, it may just be kind of plug and play. Jim at Round Lake, you might be one. Are you an ePay library?
Yes, we are, happily.
Yeah. Yeah. So we may be able to just kind of like flip a switch for those libraries. But I'm waiting to hear back from her on that. You're ready for it? Okay, I'll let her know. Like, hit us up with Round Lake. We'll get them going.
Yeah. Well, maybe call the night before.
Yeah, we'll give you some notice. So yeah, I want to get that CCS account set up so we can like get some documentation going with like actual images of what it looks like. Pinnacle was very kind to give me a demo, but I feel like I probably shouldn't be like, also, can I have 1,000 screenshots? So after that meeting on Friday, I should have more information too about kind of the whole transfer process and the bank stuff, and can start putting together some more detailed documentation for what it might look like for a library who just wants to stop doing e-commerce and just have it go to CCS. Or again, a library could, based on the governing board decision, just say, we're not doing Power Pack payments. And then, you know, if their patrons choose to pay in some other way that they could, and there would be no reimbursement, but it's an option. So this has not been my most organized project, so I apologize for that, but we are making progress, and we'll hopefully have a demo set up, at least scheduled in the next couple weeks for folks to attend after that.
I feel the same way about this ePay project, not the most organized. We were not an Illinois Funds customer yet. So, you know, it was totally starting from scratch. We now have an Illinois Funds account, but then of course, Illinois Funds is also Illinois National Bank, which is ePay, and then it's ePay is now JetPay. And it just seems like it's constantly one thing after another. So I was delighted to have the 18,000 set aside, because I don't want the libraries to feel caught off guard and you know, okay, well, this is what you now have to do. So I want to have that cushion there in case it's just like, we're just going to pay Comprise for another year, and then we're going to wean away, right, for the libraries that need time to settle everything. So that's
yeah, and I will say Megan at the treasurer's office has been super helpful, but it is a little bit like, here, do this, okay, now do this, okay, now do this, as opposed to like, here's the 10 steps total you're going to need to take. So I'm hoping to like write up, here's all the things CCS did, to give that to libraries to prepare. She has been very communicative. She is really responsive, but it's a little bit like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So I don't know the answer yet, what it totally looks like. And it sounds like she's a little bit newer as well. She hasn't set someone up with some of these things before. She's like, I'm still figuring this out. So hopefully we'll be able to put together some documentation to ease the process for our members. And again, I want to reiterate, like, folks aren't required to use ePay. If there's another system they're using in their library and we can integrate it, we will. The options from Innovative seem really limited. And I still haven't heard back from Lauren or Simon.
okay. Any other questions on ePay or where we're at right now with it? Just we're working on it. All right, next meeting. I don't remember, did we doodle poll a next meeting or was it just this one?
It's just the one. We'll send another doodle poll. We don't have to decide on this call. Does early March work for folks? I feel like that gives CCS time to iron out these additional areas, and still gives us time to turn around a budget to send to governing board or meet again if we really need to.
I see a lot of
Okay, so
nodding heads. Sounds good.
I'll work with Beth to send out some options. Lauren, if there's any like major blocks you have where it's like, oh, it can't be these 5 days because I'm whatever, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just pick some dates and send it out for everyone.
Sounds good. Okay. Is there anything else? Questions, concerns? Speak now. All right. Then I'll have a motion to adjourn at 3:50.
So move.
Second?
Second, I guess.
Second. Okay, thank
I
you,
was
thank
like,
you.
does everyone
Let's
want to
let's
stay on
go.
this call forever?
Monica and Jim. Beth, can we have a roll call?
I just want to make sure I caught who motioned. Sorry, I
It
couldn't
was
hear.
Monica.
Was it Monica? Thank you. And then Jim?
Sure.
Okay. Austin,
Yes.
DiDonato,
Yes.
Dombrowski,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Rosenthal,
Yes.
and Todd.
Adios.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Budget
you
Finance
all.
Committee. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Rebecca. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Deborah.
Bye.